And welcome back into our show. This segment brought to you by Safety Systems, East Tennessee's #1 source for security and entertainment needs. VFL J.J. Surlis and his team have spent 20 years installing security systems for homes and businesses. You'll see those stickers for Safety Systems all over businesses throughout East Tennessee. They've been designing awesome home theater systems for folks, and now they're focusing on the latest in home automation as well. Safety Systems, they can do it all. They're basically a feed, seed, and all you need kind of group. Check out their website and you'll see what they can do for you. I've had them at my house a few million times. They do great work. Safety Systems. All right, people have already moved on from Jaden Springer and Keon Johnson and Eve Pons. The talk is already about how next year's team is going to be better than last year's team. Now we're going to have a shooter in Justin Powell and five-star point guard in Kennedy Chandler. Got a big man and a dude who play with his back to the basket. And I'm sitting there thinking, he's 6'11", 215. He's the size of this pen, only taller. Huntley Hatfield's the best forward Barnes has had here. All of that's true, but, are you guys going to sleep at night counting victories? Or are you a little leery after seeing what happened last year here at Tennessee? Or, for that matter, again, Kentucky's a perfect example. You can't do a better recruiting job than John Calipari, and that team was horrible. I'm not sitting here thinking, oh, yeah, let's go ahead and pencil them in, and this team will be so much better. I'm not going to get burned on that again. I was carrying water earlier. Am I Mr. Negative now?
I think Final Four is a good starting point here.
Okay, that's the baseline?
Right, yeah. Even if you look at this past season, you had a 5 seed in the NCAA tournament, top 4 in the SEC. The results, when you just step back and you don't look at the individual games, they weren't that bad. That comes back to the status of the program, I would say. I think you want to see more competitive play. You don't want to see the season end one and done in the NCAA tournament where you lose by double digits to a 12 seed and you're not all that surprised because of the disappointing performance. I think you want to see more consistency. You want to see the development, there's that word again, over the course of the season for the team to get better from where it is the start to the year. And with that, you would expect results come with it.
Yeah, and because they did not meet expectations last year doesn't mean I'm changing the expectations this year, but I am still leery of that. I do like the fact that they, in my opinion, I've seen them play enough, they're going to be better at point guard with Kennedy Chandler. They still have a lot of answers to find in terms of how much better is Justin Powell going to make them as an outside shooting team. Are they going to have an inside scorer other than Fulkerson? Is that going to be Huntley Hatfield? So those are still some question marks. But my expectations would still be for this team to compete for an SEC championship, and it would be to make the Sweet 16. That expectation hasn't changed.
Yeah, I think you're looking. I still think it's better to try and fly under the radar a lot of times, but I think you're looking at top 4 in the SEC. At least if you meet that, then you get the double bye in the SEC tournament. You've won some big games along the way. You're going to get a good seed in the NCAA tournament. But the thing I'm looking at, John, is I'm not leery as much as kind of semi-skeptical. You have the pieces in place, and right now you should be
leery. I'm semi-skeptical.
Well, semi-skeptical and leery. Leery kind of has a different connotation.
I'm not leery. I'm skeptical.
So. I'm leery of that, Chuck.
But I'm just semi-skeptical.
I'm not leery or skeptical. Go ahead.
No, but kind of like wait and see. Let's see what they have. But I'm not leery.
But not leery. Okay, got it. I never should have used the word leery. People are still talking. Tennessee can still add here. They've still got a slot or two that they can add to this roster. They'd probably try and get an experienced big man if they could. Missed out on Walker Kessler, the North Carolina kid. But right now there's so many people. Look at all the depth. Rick Barnes is only going to play 7 or 8 guys that are going to get good minutes. We've talked about that. Most teams only play 8, 9 guys. Rick Barnes really loads down his guys with minutes. If you compare them to other schools, they run a lot of minutes to their front 5, front 6 guys. So all this depth, many of these guys aren't going to play when you're talking about all this depth. And those that don't, people are then going to say, Rick Barnes can't evaluate. So I already know what's coming. Unless they have a really spectacular year, it's going to wind up right where it was last year. And I don't expect, my guess is Sweet 16 will be probably the high end. Does that mean that Rick Barnes can't get to a Final Four or an Elite Eight? No, but I'm not betting that he will. So if you compete
Yeah.
for the SEC title, get the Sweet 16, that should be good enough with this. The question is, would that be good enough for a Vol fan base that's already upset after last year?
Well, I think you'll see mixed reaction. I think one thing that will help is that Tennessee's probably not going to be picked to win the SEC, right? They were this past year,
Yeah.
so I don't think the hype will be.
Alabama will probably get, because they're also in the top 10
Yeah,
recruiting.
right.
They'll
Yeah.
probably get another.
Yeah, I think Tennessee will probably be more in the 3 to 5 range in terms of the preseason predictions, and maybe won't be as high in the poll. I think that can help. You're a little bit more of an underdog. There was a lot of hype with this past year's team, and they beat Missouri to open up SEC play. All that top 3 talk in the nation. I don't think that's going to be there. And ultimately, does that lead to the results? Not necessarily. I think there will be more people who are semi-skeptical of what this team will do.
But not Leary.
Right.
I'm Leary.
And for Rick Barnes and his staff, they can maybe play that up of, hey, people aren't counting on us. The underdog role sometimes can benefit you.
Well,
Yes.
it can. And the other thing is that this team, which last year they don't need to have a 49-point game against Florida or a 50-point
Right.
game against Ole Miss, or games where the offense just completely disappears and you go 10 or 12 minutes without getting a field goal. So that consistency part you're talking about needs to be there for this team. But I think this team has a chance to be special. But there are a lot of things have to fall in place. And am I writing it down? No. But my expectations are this should be a really good basketball team.
And John, I said this last week, do these players you're adding fit the defensive style that Rick Barnes wants to play? Because I think that's going to be an overriding factor in how successful you're going to be. How they're going to play man-to-man, half-court man-to-man. We don't know that right now. And if that's a weakness for some of these guys, you can still struggle.
Well, here's the thing. You could say that about any school in the country because nobody knows until they step on campus. Again, I mentioned this a little earlier. I think it's one of the problems with sports today is you get a kid like Jonas Adu, and he's going to come in here and he's going to be rail thin, and people are going to complain because he's rail thin and he's not Shaquille O'Neal, which is what they expect anytime you say 7 feet. You know, they all got mad. It's the Uros Plavsic situation. People were thinking he was going to be an all-SEC player. He wasn't playing at Arizona State. That should be a tip-off. If he were going to be all-SEC, he would at least be playing at Arizona State. He wasn't. Doesn't mean he can't develop. That's a guy who is going to stick around. But a guy like Adu is going to come in here, and people are going to be upset with him, and it's a bust in year one. Because now we live in you better hit the ground running. You know, Huntley Hatfield, you got 1 year to prove yourself, or else you're a bust. Whereas in the old days, if you'd signed Jonas Adu 20 years ago, I would be more excited about it because you're going to see him develop over year. Wow, wait till he puts some weight on this guy. You wouldn't be sitting there saying, well, the whole season's going to hinge on this guy who's coming in. I just don't like where that has gone. So I think that makes it a lesser sport that everybody gets 1 year and there's no development. We talked in between segments here, and we talked about it during the season last year. I think one thing that should benefit this team, if they get a normal offseason, is development. Because what we've seen from Rick Barnes, not with every player, but with many of them, most of them I would say, they get better from year 1 to year 2 to year 3 to year 4.
Right.
You didn't see that last year. Guys did not take the leap last year. And there was such a change in what we normally see. I have to put some of that on COVID and the fact that you weren't allowed to be with your team in a normal way. If they get a normal off season, I think you'll see some of those guys from last year who didn't live up get better. Maybe wrong, but I would count on that if just looking at his track record, if you get a normal off season. All right, anyway, when we come back, let's talk a little baseball. It's been a while since we've talked baseball on this show. We'll do that next. Come on back on the Sports Source.